Welcome into a thankful episode of Flight Plan. In the midst of a 2-9 season, we are bringing the positive today before Thanksgiving. We're going to dive into why you should believe in Aaron Glenn as the man who will return this franchise to prominence. We'll preview the Falcons game a little bit, and we're getting some help. A little crossover edition with Badlands today. Paul Kilgallen is here to share his 5 reasons to be thankful to be a Jets fan. This is going to be a lot of fun. Tim McMaster along with Zack Rosenblatt and Paul. Like the show wherever you're watching. Welcome to the Baggage Handlers. Please share your reasons to be thankful to be a Jets fan in the comments section as we go too. We'll share some of those and give us a 5-star review. I'll start here, Paul. First trip to the Flight Plan. Thanks for joining us. How you holding up?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm of the Jets fan mind of like, I'm not going to root for losses. I'm not going to root for a tank, but I'm also like not cheering for wins at this point either. Like I'm just watching right now. I'm just observing and that's okay. It's actually kind of a nice place to be. Like the pressure's out. Like, it's just like, all right, what do we got for next year? So this is actually a very relaxing brand of football to get to watch where the stakes are very low.
That's a very healthy attitude, by the way. Very healthy.
It's actually a great way of phrasing it too, because it really is just like we're just watching at this point. I don't think anybody actually cares about the outcomes. We're just watching and seeing what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll decide next year if it actually mattered or not.
Right. Can't get too high or too low about anything. It's just observing.
Yeah. Enjoy individual performances for what they are. Hope that the coaches make good decisions, all that stuff that can build towards next year. All right. Speaking of coaches and next year and the future of this team, Zack, you have a story out today, and it's part 1 of a 2-part series. I'm glad you started with the positive. Basically, reasons to believe in Aaron Glenn and this regime that they will be the ones to turn around this franchise. Now, you're later going to have the opposite reasons to fear the future, I guess. But we're going to stick to the positive one today, which is out, and we're going to go through these kind of one by one. And I love the way this breaks out because we have Zack, you bringing the journalistic side of this, and then Paul just more like the fan viewpoint too on how you feel about each of these things. So let's just go. I'm just going to go through them, Zack, the way you broke them down in your story. Number 1, and to me this may be the most important one because there's been plenty of opportunities, but this team has not quit on this season and on this coaching staff.
That I was waiting to see if that would happen because I wasn't ready to criticize Aaron Glenn like fully for the first half of the season. I think he needed to show a lot of improvement, but I think the fact that, look, fighting when you're 2-9, I don't know how excited that gets you, but like staying together and like nobody's really like, gone out and criticized decisions or which they did with the previous staff, or whether subtly or not, on Twitter and things like that, or in the media. And you just don't see that happening. They're all staying on message. Even a guy like Quincy Williams, who I know was not happy that he was benched, like is still saying the right things. So
his brother was traded. Yeah.
And his brother was traded, and he's playing his best football now. So there's something to be said about all of that. And, it's funny, like it's the locker room vibe after these games is the weirdest I've ever experienced in my career. Cause it's like, it's not that nobody cares. Like they're disappointed that they lose, but like, it's not like anybody's beating themselves up about it either. They're just like, we all kind of know that these games don't matter. So they're kind of like, they're competing, but like they all are looking towards the future too. So I don't know if you view that as a positive or negative, but anyway, for all the criticism I've given Glenn over the course of the year, I think he deserves credit for keeping everybody together.
Paul, what do you think?
I think the 2 most interesting like use cases of this are Quincy and Brees. And the Quincy quote that you had in the article was great, where I think he said, I'll just read it. Belief comes with trust. If I have a coach that's changing his mind just because it's not going his way, then I can't believe or trust that. So just being able to remain on message no matter what, like that's important in any job that you're working. I always try to like compare it to just like working a regular job. Like if you have a boss who's all over the place, that's a little bit tough to live with. And if a guy is just saying the same thing all the time, no matter what, and especially with all the circumstances around Quincy, with his brother getting traded and him getting benched, for him to still feel that way about Aaron Glenn is really impressive. And I think the other one is Brees Hall, where there have been coaches here in the past, not to name names, but who have tried to communicate that message to Brees Hall. unsuccessfully. Saleh did it, at a podium, unfortunately, and it just didn't work. Like, it just didn't work. And I think a lot of fans have had, I'll call it like, issues with the way Brees kind of acts and talks sometimes, body language wise. And for him to kind of have the arc of what like the first 8 games of the season was, and then to see on the sideline Aaron Glenn calling him a workhorse and like putting his arm around him and be like, he's kind of like reshaped what Brees is. Like, he's gone from like this flashy kind of home run back to, no, dude, like, we're going to give you the ball 30 times a game and you're going to like it and you're going to do all of it. And we're going to put it on you because you're the most important player on this team. And to see Brees embrace that, not only in the way he's playing, but also in the way he's talking after games, has been really awesome.
Yeah, after it seemed like he wanted out at the trade deadline when these other guys were leaving. Now that we're past that and he's kind of bought in. All right, number 2, coaching progress. Hey, we called out Aaron Glenn a lot the first half of the season for game management, clock management, just decisions on when to go for it on 4th down and when he wasn't going for it. There was a lot of that stuff. There's been less. It seems like it's starting to click. And I mean, you can be a coordinator in the NFL and you can learn a lot about leading men and coaching up players and all that stuff. But when it comes down to like, you got the headset and it's the last 2 minutes and you're making the call, like, there's no real way to prepare for that. And I do think that he's learned from the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty disastrous before halftime for the first like 7 weeks of the season, and they've gotten a lot better just before half. I think his decision making's gotten better. I think he's pushed a lot of the right buttons in terms of like lineup stuff and motivational tactics. Like, I mean, they cut Xavier Gipson and didn't bring him back, but you cut Isaiah Williams and force him to fight his way back to the roster, and he's been one of the best punt returners in the NFL. Quincy Williams gets benched, comes back, and has had his best 3 or 4 game stretch of the season. I think he's just starting to push the right buttons. He was clearly learning on the job, I think, the first like 7 weeks, which was a little alarming. But we at our like midway pod, I was like, I'm not ready to like say I'm not confident in him going into the next year. Like, if he shows progress over the last half of the season, like, it's a 17 game season. That's why all the people who are like right at it, he had a bad game in London, people are trying to fire him, and they kind of stuck with that because once you have a hot take like that, I think a lot of people just decide they need to run with it for the rest of the way. But it's undeniable, whether you like him or not, it's undeniable he's gotten better coaching in game. I think his coordinators have gotten better. Wilkes, I still have some issues with like the lack of adjustment, but I think the defense looks like they're better coached. And Engstrand, I think, is learning, and Banjo has been a star so far. So this is what you want to see for a team that, like, the season's lost. You're going into the next season. This is, I know everybody gets mad when Glenn brings up the Lions journey in 21 to 22 and all that stuff. But, this feels similar. Like, they were losing close by the end of that first season. And then the next season, they started off the season losing, and then they turned it into winning. And if they get the right pieces in here and they get the right quarterback, which obviously is going to be the number one topic for my next story, the lack of quarterback. But yeah, I think you can feel good about his progress as a coach.
Yeah. Xavier Gipson, by the way, who has played for 2 other teams in the tri-state area since he was cut and fumbled again in a very, very visible spot.
Man,
I saw a stat the other day. I don't know if I believe this, but it said like he's got 12 fumbles, and the way they broke it out, it was like essentially he's fumbled on like 30% of his touches in the NFL, which is insane. Right. And I think like he brings in Isaiah Williams and everybody's like, this is the exact same guy, but he's worked with them and it's improved. And the way you said it, Zach, like pushing the right buttons, but also pushing the right buttons at the right times. It's easy to sit here on the sidelines and be like, how could you do that at the end of a half, right? But when the bullets are live and things are flying around and this is your first time doing this job, like it gets crazy, right? It's real. And so I don't fault him for not having all the right answers in his first encounter of all those experiences, but to watch him improve has been, it makes me feel good, right? And so that's really all I'm looking for is like, do you learn from mistakes or do you do the same things over and over again? A lot of the problems I had with Gase and Saleh were like, you make mistakes, but then you just make the mistakes again and again and again and again. And so to just see that like incremental ball moving is impressive. And on the coaching hires, I think most of them has been good. I have a theory with Wilkes that he just didn't want to be involved in the defense this year. Aaron Glenn, meaning like, I have too much to do learning how to be a head coach for the first time. I can't be involved with this defense also. So I just need a veteran. However unexciting it might be in terms of scheme, I just need somebody who's going to handle it like a pro. And I'll figure it out next year. And if they do move on from him, it'll be interesting to see what kind of talent he can attract for that position. Like, can you go out and get a big fish in Jim Leonard, or do you have to settle again? And so I think that'll be a big hire if it's open and available this offseason.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he's more involved next year too, like you just said. Okay, number 3, a shrewd general manager, and you can kind of go through. Not every move has been great, obviously, Justin Fields, but there's a whole lot of positives here, from Brandon Stevens eventually working out and looking like a solid player. Nick Folk, Austin McNamara, Josh Myers, those are like the free agents. And then you have a solid draft that they put together last spring. And then the fringe guys, which are maybe the most impressive, especially lately, right? With like Mechie seemingly looking like a guy who's going to be here for a while. So I'll start with you this time, Paul, and the moves that Darren Muji has made.
Yeah, so on the early draft picks, I'm happy to give him credit for those, but like Joe Douglas hit on those too, right? You should be able to hit on the early round draft picks for sure. And I don't necessarily fault him for some of the later ones, although I don't love like moving around for players that you didn't need to move around for, and maybe reaching for a player like Arian Smith, who at this point looks like nobody trusts. Even as fans, if we want to see him get a couple deep balls, it looks like the coaching staff doesn't trust him. I think what would impress me on those players is if you decide to move on quickly. Like if you just admit that trading up for Tyler Barron was a mistake and you cut bait, fine. If you admit that Arian Smith was a mistake, fine. But yes, the willingness to reshape the roster at the scale that he did during the season, and not just waiting for the offseason to be like, well, we're going to have to turn over 35 bodies in the offseason. Like, that's a tough job to do. So to get a head start on that, accumulate picks, accumulate guys who are under control for multiple years. He's acquired like 7 guys who are under control. They don't have to do anything to keep them. Has been really, really impressive. And you're starting to see a player profile develop with some of those moves, whether it be reclamation guys like AD and John Mechie, or guys who are kind of earlier on in their rookie contracts but haven't popped with their new teams due to crowded position rooms like Briggs, or a guy like Brownlee, who the Titans GM came out and admitted, like, we don't have the culture to support what's wrong with Jason Brownlee, which I thought was a crazy thing to say about your own team and about your own player. They've kind of like developed a profile for who they're going out and looking for. And I think, to put it in a word, like, and it's an overused word in the NFL, but like, they're going out and they're getting like dogs who they like to fit into this roster. And they're peeling away some of the, I don't want to call Sauce Gardner like soft is not the right word, but like they're peeling away some of that like untouchable player star potential for just like guys who are lunch pail guys and will get it done. And so I think it's been really impressive what he's done.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like those trades he made, like, we still don't know what you have in Mechie and AD Mitchell really, but let's say one of those guys becomes a contributor next year. I think you could feel pretty good about, I mean, Brownlee's been up and down, but I like his potential. So let's say you feel good about him as the nickel. You feel good about Harrison Phillips and Juwan Briggs, who I think have been absolute home runs, both in terms of how they play. They complement each other really well. And Harrison Phillips is already this team's leader, like, immediately. And they've needed him in that locker room, like, financially. So that means you have, let's say, 3 starters at least, and maybe a 4th contributor. And I think combined, they'll make less than $10 million total, and 7.5 of that goes to Harrison Phillips, like, cap hit wise. So you have $90 million in cap space, and you might have just filled at least 3 starting spots with quality players, on young guys on contracts where, you know, I think Brownlee is through 2027. Briggs, he's going to be an exclusive rights free agent, but that won't cost anything. If you bring back Mechie, he's a restricted guy. I can't imagine his tender will cost very much. And AD Mitchell also is not costing much. So, like, you didn't hamstring yourself at all. In fact, you gave yourself more flexibility if these guys work out. So I'm really impressed by those moves. Like, to Paul's point, like, Joe Douglas also made some good between the margins move over the years, and the waiver wire, and finding some quality guys. But But doing it in a lost season like this, like acquiring talent instead of only trading away and not giving up anything for it, like day 3 picks, you should be willing to give them up for guys under contract that you have seen contribute in the NFL. And so, like Muji, I'm really impressed with the way he does those things. Now we're going to have to see how he handles having $90 million in cap space. How does he do when he does go on a spending spree? How does he do evaluating quarterbacks in the draft class? Like, these are all questions, but like he does everything he's done has logic to it. Like even Justin Fields, there's logic to everything Muji does. And so I'd go into the offseason feeling good about your GM, but we haven't seen him in the year 2 yet. So we don't know what it's going to look like.
All right, so we can move this quicker. Let's bounce back and forth between you guys. Up next, stable offensive line, Zach.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. I mean, you have Membu, I think, looks like a star. Fashanu has kind of leveled out. I think Tittman has come into his own as a right guard. So you have 3 out of 5 starters. I think you just choose between Simpson and AVT for left guard, and you go and get a center, whether it's bring back Myers or spend big on Linderbaum or something like that. But I think the offensive line is the most appealing part for this team going in the next year, because they haven't had one where you feel confident when you drop a quarterback in there. Maybe since the 2010 Mark Sanchez, Nick Mangold, DeBrickashaw years. So feeling good about the offensive line is a weird place to be. As someone who covers the Jets, I would say.
Yeah, it's really nice. I'll keep mine simple. Joe Tittman's a guard. He always should have been a guard. And I think the AVT injury was like, I don't want to ever call an injury a blessing in disguise, but like the ability to move Joe Tittman to guard and to see it for a full season and be like, okay, he's a guard now, we have to go find a center, I think is great. And hey, coincidentally, one of the best free agents out there is a center that we probably should have drafted a few years ago. So if they go out and get Linderbaum, I think everybody would be really excited about that. And you decide which of the 2 guards do you want to keep. They both have a little bit of risk on them. AVT's is with the injury, but he's a much better player. I think everybody likes John Simpson's personality a lot, but there are some flags that come with that. And so, pick one of the guards that you want to keep, Tittman, and then go get a center.
All right, next is special teams, which I feel like we can just kind of skip over because we've already kind of dug into it a little bit. Defensive tackles emerging in a season in which you traded Quinnen Williams, Paul, is a nice thing to see when these are 2 guys that we didn't know, weren't part of this team a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, to 2 guys, I think it was like the night before the season started, essentially, or close to that.
Late August, yeah.
Yeah, so to have Harrison Phillips and Briggs come in and both of them I think Harrison Phillips early was kind of like a vocal leader. Like he was immediately in front of the media saying the right things. And Juwan Briggs has kind of slowly come on. And I think even people who pay close attention to the NFL were a little not fully understanding Briggs's value. Like everybody was like, oh, he's like a big young run stuffer. That's something that the team has needed for a long time. Good running mate for Quinnen. And now all of a sudden he's getting a little bit more run, and you see that he's got some pass rush potential too. And he says all the right things, and he seems to be developing as a leader. So to be able to flip your best player in a position group and still at least maintain the strength of the unit, even if you did downgrade a little bit, because how can you not when you let Quinnen Williams walk, has been really, really encouraging. And again, I think that speaks to the profile of the guys they bring in, that everybody they bring in, everybody in the locker room seems to say nice things about them. They say all the right things in the media. So they got a type.
Zach, this is a team that can't throw the ball, or for most of the season with Justin Fields could not throw the ball, yet they've still been able to run the ball, which is I think pretty impressive. Obviously, it's a tribute to this offensive line and also to Breece Hall, but and also just to the way they, I think, have schemed the running game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about when the other team knows you're going to run it, and they're still, for the most part, been able to do it. There's some weeks where it's like the Ravens game, they didn't run the ball especially amazing, but I think Breece, you were talking about him earlier, like he's running with a lot more like certainty. He's running with a lot more strength. He's not like avoiding hits as much anymore. And so I think he looks more like he did as a rookie than ever before. Maybe not the same explosiveness. I think we haven't really seen him break like a huge run yet, but I think that's a big reason why I think Breece will ultimately be back next year. They really like him. And, having Justin Fields as your quarterback does help the running, but I think this is going to be their identity. Even as they find their quarterback, they're going to want to run the ball. And the fact that Tanner Engstrand is very clearly good at scheming up the run. Like there's still, he has his ups and downs in the passing game, but I feel good about the running game going in the next year, I would say.
All right. And then one more thing to hit on, and that is close losses. They've actually been in a lot of games. They haven't been pretty games. They've been in a lot of ugly games, but I'd love the fan perspective, Paul, on that and the way this team is lost, because hey, early in the season they were similarly like pull your hair out close losses, right? That we're way too used to with this team, but they've still been in a lot of games. So does that mean with a team that's this young that we can just like play that forward to like, okay, you start to win close games?
I keep saying this year, like every time there's a close loss, everybody does like the no moral victories thing. And I'm kind of like, why not? We haven't had real victories in 15 years. Like, what are we talking about? Of course we're okay with moral victories. I'll take them. And so, yeah, I think, look, it all is contingent upon, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? With Gase, it never felt like there was. With Saleh, it did briefly, and then it just like the light seemed to be getting further away, not closer. And so you lose that like tolerance for the close losses. With Glenn, I think he has enough fan equity from his playing days and from his kind of team legend status, which, by the way, he almost burned up in the first 6 games. Like it was almost all gone, but I think he's done a good job replenishing it a little bit in the last few weeks. But the light at the end of the tunnel still feels close enough that you can live with it. And you're like, okay, like they showed some fight there. They didn't go away. They went. I mean, everybody circled the Ravens game at the beginning of the year like they are going to get mashed by Baltimore. There is no chance that they're close in that game. And they had a lead at halftime. And so, yeah, I can live with it, I think, as a fan.
All right. Falcons this week. There's some interesting storylines. I don't want to get into X's and O's or keys to victory or anything like that, because we've spent plenty of time already talking about how these games don't really matter. The Falcons beat the Saints last week, which helped the Jets in the Tankathon world. But there's a couple of things that are worth talking about. One is Jeff Ulbrich has gone to Atlanta, and he looks like the Jeff Ulbrich that we knew here, right? Like this is a team that's getting to the quarterback. They have an impressive like front seven. The rookies, Jalen Walker, James Pierce, I mean, have been impressive. So that's one, I guess, concern if you're the Jets is, and one key to this game maybe is this Jets offensive line that's been good against a Falcons team that isn't very good, but can put pressure on your quarterback, Zack.
Yeah, and they're in like the top 5 in pass defense as well. And I would say Jeff Ulbrich is almost certainly very motivated for this game to go out there. Like I think by the end, he obviously got a lot of crap. And at the beginning, like he had a nice little sandwich of fans hating him at the beginning and the end. But in between that, he was a very good defensive coach. They did a really good job of adjusting when guys were injured. And, their defense was really good. Obviously, him and Saleh were both part of that. And so I think the end of it has kind of like changed how people view the entirety of how he did as the defensive coordinator. But he was always a creative and good at confusing quarterbacks and forcing them into mistakes. And I think he is more willing, it seems like, with the Falcons, maybe because of their personnel, to blitz. And so I would guess he has some creative blitz packages coming Tyrod's way. He knows Tyrod can hold onto the ball too long. And I'm just curious to see how he approaches this, because Jeff still has a lot of fans in that locker room. There's a lot of guys who really liked him on a personal level. So it's just going to be one of those fun revenge game type things. And I'm curious to see how ready the Jets offense is for that, because this is a pretty different offense than the one that like used to practice against him. If you think about it, I mean, Tyrod was there, obviously, so was Brees, but like the receivers are all new. Mason Taylor is new. Part of the offensive line is new. So it's going to be, I mean, I don't know if fun is the right word, but it'll be interesting to see what he throws at them to try and show that they made a mistake getting rid of him.
Yeah. I mean,
Jeff, go ahead, Paul.
Jeff Ulbrich was a former player, so he's always going to get that respect from the players, and he was a maniac player at that. Like people, that will always stay with him for sure. Trying to remove all the emotion and fan opinion out of it, like as a team, what were we always frustrated about when Jeff Ulbrich was the defensive coordinator? It was vulnerability in the middle, right? And so teams could just run the ball directly at us, and a lot of times it felt like we didn't have any answers for it. And so if he's going to blitz, I would say go ahead and blitz. We're just going to run right at you. And it fits nicely with Glenn's narrative with Brees of like, hey, you're the workhorse now. We're going to give you the ball 30 times a game. I think that's the game plan. Just run right at that blitz all day and wear them down. And eventually maybe you can create an opportunity for yourself to win the game late.
And I always think back, Ulbrich, the way it ended, like obviously fans weren't happy, but also like just a brutal way to get a shot at being a head coach.
Yeah.
Hey, this this is the Titanic, and it's pretty much already underwater. And here you go.
Yeah, like the iceberg is like right there. They're like, oh, by the way, you're captain now. Yeah. It was a tough situation. There were some things, and I think he's talked about this publicly, that he could have done better. Like accountability obviously was the big one. I think he was a little too over positive, but and like he probably should have let somebody else call the plays defensively. But yeah, I mean, he's probably not going to be a head coach in the NFL, but I think he'll be a defensive coordinator in the NFL for a long time.
You're the captain, and not only that, but your first mate doesn't listen to anyone and never has.
All right, the other interesting storyline, and Paul, I love your perspective on this as, a longtime fan. Kirk Cousins, it's the end now, pretty much. He was actually okay last week, 16 to 23, 199, a couple of touchdowns in that win over the Saints, a bad Saints team. He's the backup, obviously, but Michael Penix Jr. is out, so he's starting. But Jets fans and Kirk Cousins, I mean, it was ugly. Like, he was almost a Jet, and then he rubbed their. Sorry, I think
You're back. We can hear you.
He was almost a Jet, and then he kind of rubbed their faces in it.
Yeah. So first of all, like, generational bag chaser, like, good for you. Get your money. I will never fault anybody for getting their money. My problem with it is that he had like half this fan base drooling over a guy who looked like he put up some good numbers in Minnesota, but he was never like one of those. He was never in that tier one of quarterbacks, and he got money like he was, and good for him for doing that. Where my problem is that he filmed it all. He filmed the phone calls with the Jets. He filmed the process. He was very open about the fact that he was never playing for the Jets, and this was purely a negotiation strategy. And then he put all of that out. He released it, right? Which it just feels like a violation of like professional respect of like the fraternity of the NFL, which people do to the Jets, right? Like, that's the thing that just happens. Nobody has respect for the Jets, and there is no professional respect. So I get it, but also you're dead to me forever. And I do want to end your season on the MetLife Field in the cold.
I have heard the narrative that like this is his tryout to be the Jets quarterback next year. I just can't see a scenario where they would want Kirk Cousins to lead your offense, but I don't know. Maybe they like his leadership or something. I don't know.
I mean, he was a good quarterback, and then he got Kevin O'Connell, which made him seem way better. And Kevin O'Connell had a great receiving cast in Minnesota. And then, speaking of chasing the bag, right? It kind of caught up with him, Paul, in a way. Like, he went to Atlanta for the cash, and then they draft a quarterback in the top 10 to basically take the job that they signed him to do. Which was dumb from a franchise standpoint, but like maybe like some poetic justice for Kirk Cousins to sign the money for the big.
And both of them might not be their quarterback next year now either, which just makes that decision even funnier.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad you brought up Kevin O'Connell, because I think that was one of my favorite parts of Zack's article this morning was when Harrison Phillips got traded, Kevin O'Connell went to him and was like, hey, dude, you're in good hands. Like, Aaron Glenn's awesome. They worked together on the 2015 Browns staff. And I think a lot of Jets fans have this reverence for Kevin O'Connell for what he did to Sam Darnold, for Sam Darnold, however you want to put that. That like he is a god in the coaching world to be able to take that player and turn it into the player that we see now. And so to have that vote of confidence from him, I think will mean a lot to Jets fans.
Just can't do it with JJ McCarthy for some reason.
Yeah,
something in the way there.
Zach Wilson.
All right, here's the moment we've all been waiting for, Paul. I don't know if you just want to take it away, but we tasked you with picking the 5 moments that make you thankful to be a Jets fan. And I believe this is like a historic thing too, right? Not now, but like just overall being a Jets fan.
Yeah, I'm gonna go way back.
Okay, 5 reasons to be thankful. The stage is yours.
So I'll start with kind of the foundation of it all, which is Joe Namath, right? Joe Namath was important to the franchise, but also important to the league as a whole. Like, that Super Bowl III proved the viability of the AFL. It was very much considered a secondary bottom tier league at that time. And he kind of elevated the Super Bowl to being the cultural phenomenon that we see today. And there's a lot of things that happened in the middle, but that was kind of the first domino to fall. And he's important to everybody. That was also pretty early on in the Jets being a franchise. He's important to a lot of people around here. I personally, my middle name is Joseph. It's after Joe Namath. That's not a bit. That's real. And so like he has huge cultural importance to this fan base even today. So I think you have to start there. Number 2 for me is Bill Parcells. And I wish he stayed longer. That's the only thing I can say is that I wish he stayed longer. Sometimes the coach that builds the infrastructure isn't the coach that wins. But he took basically rubble and built like a 15-year winner out of it that even outlasted after he was gone. Like it almost, I don't want to say it didn't matter what coach you installed after that, but the infrastructure was so good when he left that they were able to basically be in the playoffs at a 50% clip for like the 15 years after he left. And we only started to see that degrade like 15 years later when a lot of that infrastructure started to get ripped out and the reporting structure stopped changing. It's relevant to me this morning because I'm a UConn graduate, and their football program just got resurrected by Jim Mora, and then he left. Yeah, he went to Colorado State, and so that it's like the message is kind of resonating in my mind this morning of like sometimes the guy who builds isn't the guy who stays to win, but thankful for the building that they did because that program is now back. And sometimes you get a Dan Hurley who builds and wins, and he can do both of it. And I think we'll see what Aaron Glenn is. Is he a builder? Is he a winner? Is he both? Is he neither? Like, I think kind of all options are on the table right now, but if he can build, I think people will be grateful for him forever. Next, I'll go kind of like modern player category. And for me, it's Corbett, Keyshawn, and Curtis are kind of like the 3 wise men of current Jets fans. Corbett, I met at training camp when I was a child. I don't even know how old I was, but it was still at Hofstra. And my family won tickets on a radio contest. I think we called into K-Rock or something. And so we went there, and Corbett invited us to sit at his table, eat lunch, spent a lot of time with him. Couldn't have been nicer. He was from a town called Garfield in New Jersey, which I played against in football when I was a kid. So it was very much like you're seeing somebody who grew up in your area, you're kind of seeing yourself, right? And he was consummate good guy the whole way. Keyshawn, kind of the opposite of that a little bit. He was flashy, he was a star. But when he got here and he scored his first touchdown, I'll never forget it. I was in the stadium. He spiked his helmet and then he turned to the crowd and did a gladiator, are you not entertained? And the stadium had been sleeping for 10 years. And that was kind of the start of the wake up, was that moment. And regardless of how it ended with him, he'll always be remembered fondly. And then Curtis Martin, I don't even know what you need to say about Curtis Martin. Just
stud,
sneaky, one of the best lunch pail guys that has ever existed in the NFL. Never flashy, always a good person. Just kind of walked his way to getting 1,000 yards in his first 8 or 9 seasons. Got to second all time on the rushing list behind Emmitt Smith pretty quietly, was part of a lot of Jet playoff teams. Then I'll go to Rex Ryan. Controversial, but man, that was so much fun for 3 years. It was so much fun. They were winning. They were beating people up physically. And then he would just talk shit about it.
Yeah.
And it was a
Doesn't
position
happen anymore either. Yeah.
We had never been in that position before, and we've never been in it since, where not only were we good, but we were outward about being good, and we weren't ashamed of it. And we were just yeah, we're going to come in and kick your ass. And that's what it is. Right. And it all kind of fell apart, and it got very old before he left. I think by the time he left, people were like, oh my God, dude, please stop talking. Funny enough, the last time the Jets beat the Falcons was 2013 with Geno, which was kind of the end of Rex. I remember I was working in the city at that time, and I was commuting in on, I think it was Tuesday morning, because I'm pretty sure that was a Monday night game. And there was a video billboard of Rex and Geno hugging at midfield from the night before. And I remember that was kind of one of Rex's last good moments as the coach of the Jets, because they were 3-2 at that time. It was still early in the season. And so that's my 5. And then I'm going to give you a bonus one that is not there yet, but maybe someday we'll look back on it differently. And I'm going to call it the 4 horsemen of the Jets apocalypse. And it's Adam Gase, Joe Douglas, Aaron Rodgers, and Zach Wilson, because there are no 4 people who signify the current mess that they're in more than those 4 people. And at some point, maybe we can look back and say that those 4 people bottomed us out so hard that we had no choice but to just change and try to do something better. Woody got embarrassed enough. there was articles written, like it got so toxic and so bad that like they had to change. And so maybe someday we'll think of it that way.
That is a wishful thinking. All right, we got some from the chat. Michael Dunn 1A had 5 reasons: builds character, builds character, builds character, builds character, and builds character. That's good. Christian Avalos, I'm thankful for a solid O-line with 2 young tackles. There you go. Danger Zone, I'm thankful for 5 first-rounders to keep me off the metaphorical ledge. And finally, Jesus Jerry, I'm not thankful. I've woken up at 3 a.m. for 22 years to watch Jets games live. I could have done with the extra sleep. So obviously he is overseas and really dedicated. So shout out to those guys. They didn't take the project seriously, but
at least we got some current ones in there. Mine were all historic, so it's nice to hear.
It's hard to
reasons to be grateful.
Current's harder.
Yeah, there's not much recent stuff. I mean, I like a year ago we maybe would have said like the 2022 draft class or something, but it's already gone downhill to a degree. I mean, with Sauce gone and all that. But I did want to say, I feel like Rex Ryan should be thankful for Eric Mangini for building that roster for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, talk about like what we were talking about with Parcells and Mora and Hurley earlier. Like Rex was not a builder. He was the opposite of a builder, but man, could he coach.
Yeah.
And he could lead for a short amount of time, I think, right? Like his message wears out on players, I think.
100%.
Because it is so obnoxious, but for a short time, I think he's a pretty good motivator. All right, that is the end. Oh no, we got to do picks.
Yeah, picks real quick.
Why don't we just pick? I don't have the thing ready to do the full picks.
I do want to point out I had a great week last week. I only got like 2 wrong. It's maybe my best week of the season, so I jumped up the standings a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll do a full standings update next week because I don't have time, or nobody has time to watch me try to log in to the site.
The Jets line is Atlanta -2.5. I said Jets +2.5. I'm going to predict the Jets win this game. I don't have like 100% confidence in that, obviously, but I don't think the Falcons are very good. I mean, they have talent, but I don't think they're very good. So I think the Jets win this one.
I agree, and I'll take Jets on the money line at the plus odds. I think you have to get 150 on the ground, and you have to have a good special teams day. You have to flip the field a bunch of times. Like it's probably going to be an ugly game. It's cold. Call it Jets 20, Falcons 17 on a last-second Nick Folk field goal. Which, by the way, in 2013, the last time the Jets beat the Falcons was a Nick Folk game-winning field goal.
There you go.
Amazing.
I'm going to take the Falcons just to be different, and
there you go. Negative.
I've taken the Jets way too much this year, so off that wagon. All right, thank you, Paul, for joining us. This has been fun. That was a nice little twist for Thanksgiving week. Hope everybody out there has a great holiday. Gets all the turkey and stuffing and gravy and all the good stuff. Hopefully the cranberry sauce out of the can and not the real stuff.
Yes,
can is definitely better. Pumpkin pie, all that stuff, and we will be back early next week to recap this Falcons game here on Flight Plan.